Hello, everybody. Welcome to Quantum Witch Cafe, your safe place to talk about anything fringe, paranormal, bookish, taboo, basically anything you want to talk about. We will talk about it here tonight. I am honored to have Belanger, the author. The author of a lot of things, but I have two here that I love: Psychic Vampire Codex and the Dictionary of Demons, which is one of the most thorough compilations of both energy work and demon history and origins that I've ever come across. There's also a new book called The Little Book of Wicked Spells that you can find on Hadean Press. That is more, some people call it justice magic. We'll get into it. So we'll get into like why we would hex. Tonight, I want to cover everything. Anything you want to talk about, Em? What would you like me to call you?
M is fine. You can call me Zosh. That's a
Gosh. Ooh, I like that.
but any of them is fine. Zosh like Josh with a Z. It
Okay.
started off as an internet handle, and honestly, I liked it a lot because it doesn't really fit in like male, female. Otherwise, it's totally my own thing.
All right. So we have M. Belanger, otherwise known as Zosh, tonight, talking about these books. Who are you? How did you get into this? I'm going to apologize for my camera. It's kind of glitchy. We had some storms, and it doesn't like red today. So
I like the fact that it like makes your sweater sort of look like it's neon. So I'm
I just put a flash alert, right? Watch out, guys. I strobe. But okay. So who are you? What do you do? And why are you doing it?
So I wear a lot of different hats, and depending on what you're into, you have probably seen me in different things. If you watch paranormal reality TV, imagine me with a blindfold because you've watched me walking around haunted hospitals and abandoned prisons with like Jack Osborne or the crew on Paranormal State and Paranormal Lockdown. So within paranormal reality TV, I work as a psychic medium. That's not a term that I chose for myself, but they really weren't keen on psychic vampire, and it required way too much explanation for them. So we just went with psychic. I am also a singer-songwriter. So if you are a fan of Nox Arcana, you have heard me on their music as well as Earn and a couple of other ones. But the biggest thing that I do is I write. Now, where I started with third-party publishers was to write about my experiences as a psychic vampire. I am one of the, I don't want to say founding members of the vampire community because there were versions of the community that came before me. But the online vampire community, as we know it right now, owes a lot to a lot of the work that I've done. So if you are familiar with words like the beacon and awakening in terms of vampiric awakening, if you've heard terms like dream walking, deep feeding, all of those things tie back to me and a text I wrote called the Vampire Codex. It started off as the Codex Sanguinicus in 1994. So it's been out in a whole lot of different versions for many years now. Hi, I'm old. But I write a lot of nonfiction, mostly about spooky, occult, psychic, and paranormal topics. And I write a lot of fiction as well, similarly on spooky, occult, paranormal topics.
Which we love. Well, I love. I mean, if you're in this channel, like if you got past like my crazy profile picture and you're in this chat, you got to know there's going to be some fun weirdness happening here around vampires and weirdness. And I mean weird in a good way, guys. And I'm not
no, seriously. Like, oh, don't call yourself weird. That's like self-sabotage. I'm like, I am Gen X. I was a goth. We flew our freak flag proudly. We called ourselves weird. We claimed all of that because anything that took us outside of the Margaret Thatcher, Reaganomic, cubicle, Prozac-driven world, and just said to all of that, like that was our happy place. We were on the outside and we were proud of it.
Absolutely. I vape. They call me Claude the Inhaler. You're adorable. I just met Johnny. I think he's new to the channel. I think like this past Wednesday I had a show. I just decided to say yes to any date that somebody said yes to. I was like, okay, let's do it. So thank you for talking about that. I have a few questions. You mentioned the term, and I like to debunk this, and I did interview Jack the Vampire as well, and we talked about this in depth, so make sure you check that one out as well. But what So we have this stigma around the term psychic vampire. Like anybody that drains your energy, we're like, oh my God, he was a psychic vampire. Let's talk about the light and dark aspects of psychic vampirism and what exactly a psychic vampire is. So we can kind of start off on the right foot that when we're using this term, and maybe this is the first time somebody's heard it in a positive connotation or in a non-judgmental connotation, they know what we're talking about.
So the term starts to see widespread use in the 1800s during the occult revival, in mainly the London area. Might be familiar with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a fairly flamboyant fellow by the name of Aleister Crowley, who is connected to all of that stuff. They are folks who were studying ceremonial magic and energy work. Stoker was involved with this crew of people, and there are a lot of elements of vampirism as it was understood as a paranormal reality that he worked into his novel Dracula, which is why sometimes there's a little echo of reality in there, as much as it's also fiction. For the longest time, especially out of their work, particularly the work of Dion Fortune, whose real name was Violet Mary Firth, she really promoted in her book Psychic Self-Defense the idea that a psychic vampire or an astral vampire was a negative energy worker or magical worker who preyed upon people malevolently and willfully. And she saw no possible way that it was ever a good or functional thing. Unfortunately, she set the benchmark for that. Everybody then just repeated that. So moving into the 20th century and even on to the 21st century, we hear psychic vampire and we see that as someone who is willfully preying on others or unconsciously preying on others. And the experience is only ever presented in a negative way. You've been attacked by a psychic vampire. You've had your energy drained by a psychic vampire. The irony is the Church of Satan takes psychic vampires, and even to the Church of Satan, they present them as bad. which is funny. The Christians don't like it, the Satanists don't like it. Goodness gracious. So what is the reality? The first thing to understand is if you are going to believe in vampires, psychics, or any of it, energy is a thing that exists in the world. We all sense it, we all interact with it, we all generate it. And everybody has an interaction where they both give and take this stuff in every communication you have, every time you kiss a loved one, every time you go out into the natural world, you are exchanging energy. And the most common thing is that there's a balance for that. Most people give as much as they get, and some people don't. Because as we've probably learned in this 21st century is not everybody's the same. Everybody's experience is different. The way in which we interact with the world, the way we perceive the world, the way we interpret those perceptions, that can be radically different from person to person on a fundamental level. And this is where you get psychic vampirism. Some people's relationship with energy, they don't produce enough, or they are not connected to enough in a way that allows them to perpetuate their health and mental well-being without having to take it actively from other people. Now, that does not mean that they must do it against somebody's will. And actually, in the most ideal circumstances, you do it consensually, willfully. It's an exchange. It is a celebration. It can be ritual. It can be sex. It can be communion. It can be this glorious gift shared between people. But somebody who's a psychic vampire needs to take at least some energy from people around them. And that's all it is. In a lot of ways, it works like Reiki in reverse. And the only way it gets complicated is the choices of the person with that inborn trait, how they manifest it, or if they are conscious of it. The biggest problematic psychic vampires are folks who have no idea that this is what they are. And that quality is with them. They're going to need that energy, and they will unconsciously find ways in order to get it, which generally means they don't know that they're doing it. They don't know to ask permission.
Wow, that's very interesting. And that also, I don't even know what I just kicked down there. Sorry. Something went rolling. So that kind of is very interesting to me because we see a lot of these jokes now around black cat, golden retriever dynamic, or opposites attract. everybody kind of has this person in their life that is like almost the opposite of them. And before I knew about psychic vampirism, and its usefulness or like what it was in depth, besides the stigma or the general term that's thrown around, I kind of realized like I was with super high energy people and they found me calming and I found them grounding, or vice versa. Both of us calmed each other down. So it's interesting how people will just sort of gravitate towards an energetic balance, whether you consider yourself a psychic vampire or not. We are all these energetic beings, right? And we're looking for that grounding in other people in our surroundings as well. So it's interesting that you say that, because some people, they have no idea that they're so deficient, and they'll come into a room with their, like what people say, their mood, and they'll just suck the energy out of the room.
Yeah, and sometimes it's been presented as like you have this handicap, and that's not really, that is our society talking, that the idea of having to take something means that you are deficient, in the same way that we used to assume that if you are autistic, there's something horribly wrong with you, you need to be institutionalized, as opposed to this is simply a different way of being. This is a different way of interacting with reality. So people who need to take energy do naturally pair up with people who have more than they need. And it's not necessarily a negative thing on either end. They balance each other out.
That makes a lot of sense, and very well said. So that's kind of the gist of psychic vampirism and what it is, what people do with it. I hope that somebody took something away from that, because it's not just like many things in pop culture that we learn, or even we learn from our surroundings or people. It's just not what it seems all the time. The next thing, so I'm just kind of like going through, I picked kind of like 3 books that I wanted to talk about. The next one steps on a lot of feet. A lot of people don't like it. I want to kind of touch briefly on demons, because you are you have so much information on them, and you made this amazing book, and it covers a lot of what I'm going to ask you. But it is, guys, it's in depth, and it totally just, we are taught the word demon without ever wondering what it actually is. Well, some of us don't. You obviously have, because you've written books. But so we have this connotation of a demon, of this thing with horns, right? That is only out for what is considered evil. What is your take on demons and their origins and their role in, the occult, religion, and just like society in general?
The Christianized idea of demon obviously is a fallen angel or a cast out evil and malevolent entity that is working toward the purpose of bringing like horrible things into the world. And that binary of good versus evil, light versus dark is fairly recent as far as demonology goes. Like it pervades our culture. But if you trace the origin of the word daemon, it's from a Greek term, and Socrates had a personal demon. It actually was really common for folks in classical times to have a personal demon in the same way a person has a spirit guide now or a guardian angel. And the word that we use for demon is the word that they used. Your demon could be a good demon or a chaotic demon. And they would basically kind of like, steer your life with like little nudges here and there in different directions. But generally, they were guiding forces. In Socrates' case, as if you know his story, he's condemned to death for corrupting the youth of Athens with knowledge and making them think about things, because that's radical and terrible. But he goes willingly to his demise with the statement that like his demon didn't tell him it was a bad thing. Like it made him believe that there was something for him beyond death, that he was in the hands of something that would ferry him across, that he had nothing to fear. Because his personal demon had always steered him away if it was really bad. If we go to the roots of what we understand now as Western civilization, so Sumer, Babylon, the Fertile Crescent, like the kind of like that whole Mesopotamian stuff, demons in many ways, the things that give our exemplars of demons, exorcism, possession, they are the mischievous or misbehaved children of gods. Like they're not necessarily things that crawled out of the pit. They're not necessarily even cast out. The daughter of Anu, Lamashtu or Labartu, is referred to in a number of spells and rituals that come down to us from Sumer Babylon. And she's the daughter of heaven. She's just kind of a raging bitch. She practices witchcraft. She does a lot of nasty things. You get on her bad side and she does awful things to you. She is in a lot of ways an early like she's an early inspiration for Lilith. And she is very much like, if you are familiar with Lilith as a figure now and you read about her, you're going to be like, oh, well, aren't these the exact same person?
Yeah.
And there's definitely a theme there of someone who, like, I don't like your system and I don't like your rules, so I'm going to do what I want. And a lot of what I want is really torturing men.
We've all been there. I'm just kidding, guys. You little sweetheart with your little Y chromosome. Sorry.
But like it's really informative to see where these themes start. Some of our other ideas of demons, if you've watched The Exorcist and like the subsequent stories of The Exorcist, you probably know the name Pazuzu. And Pazuzu is presented as this great grand king of demons, but in the context from which we've borrowed him, Pazuzu was, and this is a concept that really doesn't translate easily to the way that we look at demons and demonology now. Pazuzu was king of demons because he was a powerful entity that both commanded and controlled them. So if you pissed Pazuzu off, all of the bad things would happen to you. But if you wanted to work with or avoid the bad things, you worked with Pazuzu to control what was going on. And that was actually a really common thing. So in the Testament of Solomon, there is a litany of demonic entities that are, each of them is in charge of a different bad thing that happens to humanity. My favorite one is Tetanus. Literally, his name is Tetanus. He's the demon.
Oh.
A lot of them were demons of disease because they didn't understand medicine the way that we do. So they had these great, terrible entities that represented bad things that happened. And it wasn't just that the demon caused it. The demon was the one that could also cure it or prevent it. So you would work with that entity to try to prevent it. Or if it happened to you, you had to figure out, how did I get on their bad side?
It's funny how that works, that entities just want to be treated how you would want to be. You know, it's just the golden rule, right? Is that the treat somebody or something how you want to be treated? Because I never had a problem with some of these entities and I avoided them. But I mean, if you're an open person spiritually, like you run into some of them and you're just like, I'm going to treat you with respect. And that's a lot of, I mean, that's been my experience. I've had some growing up, learning how stepping into that openness. Yes, I definitely had some scary experiences, but and messing with things before I knew how to mess with things. Definitely had some intense experiences, but you have to wonder, like, is it scary because it's unfamiliar, or is it scary because you're actually going to hurt yourself? How does somebody differentiate between that? You know, is this all discernment or intuition? How would you describe somebody being afraid of an entity that they don't quite understand and they're just afraid? So they're like, it scared me, it's evil.
Well, first, I think a lot of things are scary because they have bad PR. Like, we've been taught to assume that they're going to do terrible things to us.
Like our boy Pazuzu.
Well,
sorry,
that does set us up for feeling combative or feeling scared even before we open a dialogue. And how do you tell whether or not something's actually scary, actually going to hurt you? Honestly, you won't know until you've had some contact that is just honest, genuine. I sense something around my house. It seems dark to me. Let me open a dialogue. Is this something that is willing to communicate and actually negotiate with me? Like, can we establish a consensual relationship? That's not evil then. Even if it is big and bad and can do terrible things, if that is a being that is intelligent and willing to work with you, that's not necessarily evil by any stretch. Certainly, to be dangerous, to be something that can do big, scary things, does not automatically mean that entity, that being is evil in their purpose, in their long-term goals. If your feeling is fear, if your overwhelming sense is that this is something that is going to cause you harm, like, assess what has actually happened and ask yourself, am I scared because bad things are, like, this is genuinely a bad thing for me? Or am I scared because I don't understand why? Am I scared because I don't feel like I could stop it? Am I scared because I'm feeling protective of vulnerable people around me? And explore the fear first before jumping to the conclusion that you're under threat. Like, with the TV shows, a lot of what I had to do behind the scenes was help families do accurate threat assessment on situations that seemed terrifying on the surface. And that threat assessment can be very difficult if you do not have the proper tools to understand what you're dealing with. And most of us don't. Without, cracking up, cracking 1,000 different books on things and, like, really having a lot of experiences by which you can judge. So if this is new to you, no, you can't do accurate threat assessment and feel confident in it. You have to fuck around and find out a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I never had thought about working with, like, these demonic names before, entities that, like, I grew up, like, Catholic, but my grandma was she talked to spirits. She was a medium, so she was, open but still Catholic. A lot of, like, Santeria type stuff happening. She would never say that. She'd just be like, oh, it's just a prayer, or, hold on.
Yeah, it's funny how much magic finds its way into different ethnic.
Sorry, I have little ones.
Huh? Oh, no, it's
Sorry,
okay.
my little ones was trying to bust in.
No,
Okay.
it's funny how much magic finds its way into different ethnic flavors of Catholicism, particularly. My family was Irish Roman Catholic, and there's a lot of magic in that as well, and fairy faith. But it gets very, like, covered over with. Oh, this is totally just Christianity. We're just also leaving offerings to the fairies in the backyard. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Yeah. This is part of life. Yeah, lighting a candle, burying statues of saints upside down. I walked in on my grandma, my great grandma, doing an egg cleanse on my grandma, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I was like, what are they doing with that egg? And then later on to find out what it was. So it's interesting. Also, being Native American and Mexican, and then the Catholicism swept in, right? So a lot of indigenous things, even, I would say, even like Fey magic from your culture mixed with Catholicism. So it's interesting how we just make it work, but some people will never accept it.
Also, we don't, I think, give as much. We don't realize how our ancestors, from where these beliefs came, how they were colonized. And part of colonization was to demonize and present as demonic the indigenous beliefs and practices. Like, Christianity was very aggressive. It took good lessons from the Roman Empire about assimilating people and forcing them to have certain beliefs and finding ways to drive them away from their previous beliefs. And a lot of that was painting those previous beliefs as dangerous, as scary, as harmful. And we carry a lot of that misinformation with us. And if we don't take some time to examine it, we will simply be driven away from our roots by fear.
Yeah, fear is a crazy energy to partner with. It's a lot of people match energy without realizing it. So somebody that is fearful will only kind of experience the fear around a situation, and nobody tells you that, right? They just they're how do you even begin to teach that to somebody? Like, for example, like I have little kids, and I try to tell them, like, you might be afraid of this thing you think you feel in the closet or see in the closet. I'm not doubting you, but also, like, the less fear that you feel, the more you're going to be able to handle what you're seeing or what you're feeling.
Yeah. It can be so overwhelming to be presented with an undeniable experience of the supernatural. an apparition, the awareness that it's not just your imagination, there's actually something that seems to be coming out of your closet. And we are saturated by pop culture portrayals of how that is going to lead to possession, the house is going to burn down, like all kinds of horrible things are going to happen. And at the end of the day, that's probably just grandma. And grandma really wants to reach out, but she's also trying so hard that it will seem overwhelming. And just that very moment of breaking that barrier. There's a poet whose work I love, Rainer Maria Rilke, and one of his lines that sticks with me, it's from his a series of elegies. Every angel is terrifying. And it's the idea that things that are wondrous, things that are beyond our ordinary reality, anything that is extraordinary is frightening by the very fact that it exceeds our ability to perceive the familiar. Like it breaks our idea of what is possible. And in that breaking is a certain kind of trauma. And we have to heal from and adjust to and kind of, it's like, I don't know, it's like gauging a piercing, like you're gauging your brain. It hurts at first.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot of people have these, awakenings, and it's really hard for them, right? Like it's really hard to have something you live with challenge and even experience it, like in this world. Like I did ayahuasca last April, and after that, everything, like I already had like a series of awakenings. We're like onions, right? Like it just peels back another layer. But this was obviously huge, a huge, huge thing to experience. And so I came back and I'm just like, I feel like I'm on another planet. I'm seeing things like I've always, seen things differently than most people, but this was like a whole another level. This was like, it's like you're shown the whole universe, but then you're expected to just suck it all in and go back to normal, right? Feed the kids, get in the car, go to the airport, whatever it is. So how do you walk somebody through a traumatic awakening experience?
First, remind them that it's more of a seesaw than anything, that like you're going to have moments where things are very extreme, but on this other side, you do have to feed yourself, clean up after yourself, like pay the rent, do things. So you have to weirdly find a way to navigate these two very disparate types of being, this mind-shattering awareness of deeper truths in yourself and experiences and perceptions that your culture has given you no grounding for, no word for, no context for. And while you're struggling to figure that out, you also have to be a person here. And they are not mutually exclusive things. In order to navigate the extraordinary ecstasis of awakening experiences, you need to have a firm grounding in who are you here and right now? Like what feels healthy for you? Where do you go to heal yourself? And how do you carry on with the very mundane things? Because a lot of people will present magic as if it's this thing that is separate from that. And magic is something that you breathe and live in everything. The simplest, humblest tasks are infused with it. And if you can achieve that balance of experiencing mind-altering awareness in the moment that you're stirring the pot for dinner, that's finding that balance. Another thing for anybody who's going through, especially a really traumatic awakening, have a support system. Do not talk only to yourself. Find some way to express what you're going through, even if it is only to keep a journal, even if it is only to have a vlog, like some way of getting this out so that you can look at it somewhere other than just roiling around in your own head. It's ideal to have at least one good friend you can rely on, especially to check you. Because when you start to break down the boundaries of what is possible, you're going to have to reconstruct the way that you look at reality. And it can become very challenging to not assume that everything is now magical. So to avoid falling off the lip of magical thinking, having someone who can be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was just the wind. I'm that dream, I don't know that that dream was as much as you think it is, but maybe if we record it and we look at it, we analyze it, someone that you can use as a trustworthy sounding board.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I've, as just a person that's like attracts people going through things, it'll be 10 years and somebody will call me, I saw this, or now I'm experiencing this. I'm sorry that you're crazy, or like, not even that, just like something really weird happened and I'm telling you because I know you won't judge me. But I have seen where everything becomes a sign, everything becomes a message, everything. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I've seen people like completely, like you said, you still are in this world, so you have to take care of this body and your responsibilities. So it's hard to help them find that magic in, like you said, stirring the pot. But if you are, I think meditation is important, because you can meditate while stirring a pot. Like I was telling you on the treadmill, I was like watching my story unfold, right? So like, and it just happened. You can do these things while you're doing the boring things. But it's very hard to find that balance. But you're right. It's having somebody that might be, open-minded, but maybe a little more practical in some senses. Practical by, normal, by common terms, is nice. Like, be like, what do you think of this? Because I had this dream, and should I be afraid?
Well, and also, like, our culture tells us that like progress is to push, 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 to constantly beyond, to constantly push forward, to constantly break boundaries. And awakening, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, when you delve into magic, energy work, self-awareness, all of these things, what you want to do is you have your revelatory moment, but then you have to pull back for a little while and really put that into context, like break your world apart and then refashion it. So these periods of sort of mental explosion and expansion must be followed by periods of quiet and reflection as you find a way to put that back into context. You don't keep pushing. You want to go past the initial boundaries, figure out where the new plateau is or the new boundaries are, adjust, find your new normal, and then pursue another layer of it. Because awakening isn't just lighting one bulb. It's like standing in this cave and you have a match and you light the match and there's a candle in front of you. But when you light that candle, you realize that there are so many more candles and the cave is so much bigger than you realized. And at any point, the only thing I'd caution anybody is, if anyone tells you that they have lit the entire cave up and they have all of the answers, they're lying to themselves, if not consciously lying to you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always wary of that. People that know, like, have figured it out. Just to put it simply.
1995, I will give you the mysteries of the universe.
How many times have we seen that? Yeah, the great, like, there's like some big event happening and people are expecting it. They're like counting on it to happen, and then it doesn't, and then they spiral. It's very sad to see some of that stuff happen. So you have, so your latest book is the Little Book of Wicked Spells. Is that the latest one? So is that, yeah, okay.
Latest one.
Okay, the most latest.
I write a lot.
Yeah, how many books do you have altogether published?
Somewhere over 30, but that's not actually counting a lot of the stuff that I did in the 90s, which I used to not count because everybody was like, self-publishing and small press and indie press doesn't count, but apparently it does now. So it's more than, it's a lot.
It depends on who you talk to, but it definitely counts.
It really depends, but a lot. I mean, I've been doing it since 1990, 1991. So I've been writing a lot. But the Little Book of Wicked Spells came together last summer. I live on social media a lot. There's a lot going on in the world, and it frustrates the hell out of me. Activism can only take us so far, and magic, like actual acts of magic, especially cursing, hexing, binding, have historically been the last resort of marginalized people who don't otherwise have access to a fair justice system. And you can see that if you study it from an anthropological perspective. And you see it with people who are doing stuff and spells and like the little like orange things and, you know, freezing people in their freezer. Like when you have no other recourse to protect
Yeah.
yourself, magic is, even if you don't believe in magic, it is fantastic therapy.
Sure. Yeah. I
So,
have friends that will like burn pictures of ex-boyfriends and
mm,
they're not witches. You know what I mean? They
yeah,
just like, they just know.
just
We
let it
just
go.
know inherently we
Find
have to
some
have
way
a
to let it
ritual.
go, get it out of your life, like burn it, bury it, whatever you do.
Yep.
So,
Salt,
little,
with salt burn berries.
yeah, Little Book of Wicked Spells is just a bunch of that, different ways, and they are for a lot of different aspects of marginalized communities. Many of them are responding to climate change, to the endless wars that are everywhere right now, to the terrible things that are happening to LGBTQ people, and just little ways of trying to bind the power of corporation and corruption and greed. Not necessarily in all cases individuals, although there is one against wife beaters, but with the
Needed.
caveat that although female identified people are statistically the most common subjects of partner abuse, it's not meant to exclusively be like adapt it to whoever is being the victim of partner abuse. Um, Things that give you tools to try to find a balance of justice in the world.
Yeah, I've heard it called, I want to say I've heard, I think Miss Ada was on here, and she said justice magic, or maybe it was somebody else. A lot of a more, this is another taboo topic, right? So if you're listening, we're going to move on to hexing, cursing, and stuff like that. So if that's not your thing, thank you for joining us this far. If you're curious, thanks for hanging on. So what this also has a lot of negative connotations, right? Because we always see in movies and books like this witch that is just out for blood or out for no reason, is just cursing people.
Yeah.
Um, Somebody has to be made that way. Like something has to have happened to make somebody want to do that. So what exactly is a hex or a curse, and how would it be used for justice?
I mean, to me, the dividing line between malevolent hexing and cursing and retributive magic or justice magic is, why are you doing it? Are you doing it because you just don't like someone and you want to hurt them and there's no motivation beyond the selfish desire to do so? Or are you doing this because something has happened to you or a friend and you need to take power back in order to right a wrong, to protect someone, to try to set things back into a healthy balance? Hexing and cursing, again, super hot topic. 30 years ago, you couldn't call yourself a witch and play with stuff like that. Like nobody wanted to talk about it. Certainly nobody was going to publish a book about it with actual spells, because it was just completely seen as always, always bad. There is the idea that like whatever you send out into the universe comes back to you 3 times 3, or the rule of three, the law of attraction, et cetera, et cetera. And my answer to that, particularly for justice magic, is with justice magic, you are the thing happening back to the person who did the bad stuff. Like you are helping or asking the universe to be the consequence. And that's really the line, is, are you doing it purely selfishly for the purpose of harming someone or to self-aggrandizement for like, you know, something that you're going to benefit for? Or are you doing it in order to be that justice in the world?
Wow, that's very powerful. And I could see how people could abuse it. But for
Okay.
somebody that has been hurt over and over again, um, I just like think of like people I knew and myself in high school, just like kind of like taking all the abuse and never empowering, never knowing how to claim that power back, and waiting for somebody or even sometimes some God to do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to have agency over your own justice is a very powerful thing. If you know, and I mean, whether you abuse it or not is your thing, but sometimes, like you said, like there's not a lot else left to do. And I think that a person that is pushed to that point in most cases doesn't want to have to do something like use magic against somebody.
I mean, my favorite curse, and I'm using air quotes around curse because it's not exactly a curse, but it's the curse that you use if you have an ethical dilemma about whether or not you're doing wrong by what you're trying to bring into the world. Like, if you're not sure that you're judging a person fairly, maybe you are worried that you don't have all the information, but you still feel that you've reached an inflection point where something must be done. May you get what you truly deserve. Just that. May you get what you truly deserve. May that person get what they truly deserve, because that bakes into the spell, into the intention. Maybe I'm looking at them wrong. Maybe I don't have the whole story. Maybe there is something else that is motivating them. Maybe I'm just being petty. And may you get what you truly deserve. Probably the first time where that really, really worked for me was I worked at a bookstore. There was somebody who was just getting up my nose. We were really incompatible people. I could not stand her. I felt that she was being very, very petty for me and manipulative. And maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. I did May You Get What You Truly Deserve. And within a couple of weeks, she got a job offer that took her just away. And I didn't have to deal with her anymore. So go on, live your life. Solved my problem, maybe solved her problem, especially if her problem was me.
Yeah, that's and it sounds like you both benefited.
Yeah.
So.
and that's one of the things with justice and retributive magic, where you leave it open in some cases to just let the universe or your higher power, if they're gods and goddesses that like you really speak to. I have done a fair amount of work with the Goetia. If you are familiar with the 72 goetic entities and you read up on them, a lot of them track down thieves and like bring justice to murderers and people who have harmed you. Like, they are tutelary spirits and spirits of justice and retribution, and have basically been like, hey, yo, Marbus, somebody stole from me. Could you go fix that for me? Like, let's have a little arrangement here.
I have a soft spot for entities like that, because just within the past year, I've realized the scariest one that growing up, Lucifer, Samael, I was always afraid, right? Because you're taught to be afraid. And this name kept coming up, and I was like, I'm into some dark stuff, but I'm not trying to mess with you, sir. And then it ended up being, well, let's just talk. It was literally this entity just like, just feel me for a minute. Like, you're just like that.
Those layers of pop culture and story.
Yeah.
If you go to the very roots of a lot of these, they didn't start off as what we think of as demons.
Yeah.
Even the goetic entities are almost certainly the gods and goddesses that were associated with the decans of the zodiac in ancient Egyptian times. Like, there's a whole thing there where you can kind of trace it. And demon was the word that their class of being is translated into, but they're not demon as we think of them from a biblical context.
And you're really missing out, because it's like making a new friend. I know this is going to sound scary to some people that I'm saying this, but if I had not opened up to this entity who came to me as Lucifer, I would not have. I had like a really rough 6 months because my husband was deployed. And during that time, I found I struggled with a chronic depression, and there were times where I was just on my knees, and this entity was like, "This isn't that. Like you're not slipping into that. This is just a bad day. Like, you need to see like the beauty in yourself, the beauty in other people." And it would show me this. And then when I asked for help with the book, I asked for, kind of funny because I didn't think about this till now, I wanted 2 books. And so my one book is now going to be 2 books. And then I got a bonus book out of the whole thing too. So it was just one of those things where, like, had I not opened up to that, I would not have seen a lot of like things that I saw this past 6-7 months. Because I was so afraid before of just the name, right? Because, oh, Lucifer, Samael, they're gonna tear up your house and your soul. They're gonna eat it, like they're gonna eat your babies, like.
To put it into a little bit of perspective, There was another demonographer, Colin DePlancy. He wrote a very, very famous, like multiple editions, basically Infernal Dictionary in the 1800s. And included in the demons there, because of their perspective, were Persephone, Kali, Hecate, Hades. I like a whole list of people who are gods and goddesses in other cultures. And from the lens through which he was working, they were demonic because they weren't Christian. And like a lot of stuff really does come down to perspective. And that can sometimes be a slippery slope if you are using that as an excuse. But I think it's really essential to dig deeper. Never go only from what one book or one person or one source tells you about something, especially if there's something in you that's like is called to that. Like, knowledge is power, so empower yourself.
Exactly. Like you want to like trace the origins of everything. Some people don't care to. Some people are fine with that's what I was told, and that's fine.
Well, and unverifiable personal gnosis is a legitimate path, like whatever speaks to you, what is ever speaking through you. But the one thing I will say with UPG is don't assume that that's anybody else's truth but yours. Like,
yeah.
Don't try to shove it on someone.
Constantly getting that sort of feedback, especially since I had masked for so long as just trying to blend in, to be honest. And then all of a sudden they're like, all of a sudden you look like a vampire. But people that have known me long enough are like, no, that's actually how she is. But then she was doing this and now she's back to it's actually how she was, how she should be. So people want to say, well, I think that you tap, like I had a friend that was like, I don't know, man, you're tapping into some dark stuff. And I'm like, okay, like it's dark at nighttime. Like, is that bad? Like the forest is dark. Is it going to be bad because it's dark? Like you have to understand that just because you can't see doesn't mean that something's going to happen. That's going to hurt.
It really comes down to perspective. And to assume that we've got to, broadly, our society has this really reductionist view of black and white, good and bad. And like there's some really unpleasantly nasty, like racial, colonial things that are baked in with that. And nothing's that simple. Nothing.
Yeah. And it's the more I feel like the more time I spend on this earth, the more I realize the line is like microscopically thin. like it's not just like you said, black or white. I'm gonna say hi to some people that came in.
Yeah.
Hi Fang Fem, how are you? So great to see you. Johnny, you've been here. I'm seeing your comments. I've been starring your questions. Moon's Halo, hello. So awesome to see you. Crystal Cluster, hope you're having a good night. And Kirby had a question. We'll get to the questions soon here because we're coming up on the hour. I don't want to keep you too long. Before I get to the questions, is there anything that you wanted to talk about tonight that we didn't touch on? Anything, any appearances you're going to be doing, anything you're working on, anything that you would like to just address, like to the world that's maybe misunderstood that you wish was understood, anything like that?
Well, for appearances, because I've cut down significantly on going out into the world for so many reasons, but mostly to focus on writing. I have one public appearance this year, later in the year, I think around September, at the Temple of Witchcraft, Witchfest, and I'm the keynote speaker there. So if you find yourself in the vicinity of Salem, New Hampshire, which is a very short drive from Salem, you could listen to me talk about the Watcher Angels. And
oh my gosh, stop it. Okay, so you're also going to write a book about that, right? Because I want to.
I did a whole tarot deck on it.
What do you have it published?
Yeah. That was a bucket list thing, and so it's a book and a guidebook. So my degree's in comparative religious studies. With, concentration in psychology of religion, and where I really started digging was extra biblical stories about demons and angels and all of that stuff for a whole lot of reasons. But like rather than get into that, but yes, that is a thing that I live in. One of the other places where I express that is Blood of Angels, which is the album with Nox Arcana. So that is infused with lore from the Watcher Angels.
Oh my goodness.
The title track is an invocation of them.
Stop it. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to come back and listen. So yeah, I definitely need to get into that because I've researched it myself, and then I get overwhelmed with the amount of information, and then and I'm not trying to be lazy, but you did all this research and
that's why I do it. Like, first of all, not everybody's going to be able to crawl through Latin grimoires that are in French, Spanish, badly translated Italian. I had help with the stuff that was in Hebrew because my Hebrew is terrible. Help with the stuff that's in Greek because really that's just not in my wheelhouse at all. But yeah, no, that's the whole point of being an academic. Like, I read all that crap, so you don't have to. And if you're not sure about research, that's why there's like a 15-page bibliography. Go nuts.
Yeah, then you can look at that stuff. Yep. I had another comparative religion woman on named Diana Pasulka, and she deals with Catholicism and UAP. Mm-hmm. Well, she does a lot more than that, but that's why I had her on because of her book. She's written a few books now, but like I love comparative religion people because it's something that is very interesting to me, but I'm not going back to school for that. Like, not that I wouldn't want to, but I just feel like the cost of schooling right now is insane.
It's not what it was. I had a very different experience. I was a National Merit Scholar. I had a full ride scholarship, so I just got to do whatever I wanted to do and use the extra money to buy books. And that is not the experience that people have anymore.
I love that. I love book people, and I'm very jealous of your situation behind you, your cool bookshelf with all your books and everything. So what else did you want to talk about tonight? Is there anything that we didn't touch on?
Not really. I mean, like, I design games. I just...
You do it all.
I do a lot of stuff.
I do have
I've been indulging in writing horror fiction and stuff with the good folks at Tenebris Press, who just launched their magazine Skull and Laurel.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I do have your website in the description for people so they can find everything that you do. Let's do some questions.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I have little kids and they scream, so
that's fine. I've got cats. I'm surprised that the white one hasn't come through to just meep at us.
I had like the loudest cat for a while. I had one cat, and he was like just the meow, like didn't even like do meow. It was like meow. Like just very sassy meow. I used to call him my little gay wizard because he was very fancy and he had this beautiful beard. And he would just, anytime I was doing tarot or magic, he would just be like he was judging, like, okay, you're doing it great, So, but I loved him. And I need more cat. I need a cat. I need more cat. Yeah,
let's see.
I always see your kitties. So we were talking about psychic vampirism. So this is where this is from. And you kind of addressed it with like Reiki being one of the modalities where people would fill with it. But some people serially take it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Like, what if it's reversed for some people, like a serial healer? Yes, some people have. Everybody has a different relationship with energy, and a lot of figuring out like what is your magic, what is your thing, is like really doing the assessment, the internal exploration of like how does this manifest for me? Now, the one thing I will say is, as a psychic vampire, you need to ask permission. You need to get consent. If you know that you're doing this, check in with the person that you're going to do it to so that they are a willing and knowledgeable participant. And the same should go for healing. If you're going to give somebody energy, they should also be a willing and knowledgeable participant in that. You are impacting them. You are affecting them. And I know some friends, actually, because she's been open about it online, I can say Laurel K. Hamilton is a friend I've bonded with because she does not respond well to Reiki, and neither does her husband. And well-meaning fans, when she complains of sniffles, will just like start beaming stuff at her, and that's not fun. So not everybody responds to every type of energy the same way. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're bad or that you're doing it wrong. It means that we need to be in dialogue and be very clear and open of like, this doesn't feel right, and communicate about that and stop and assess and try to figure out why. Sometimes the answer is you're just not the right tool for the job. And that's okay. But always ask permission.
Yes, I remember I took like a Pillars of Priestessing class when I'm after, and then I went on for like Reiki stuff, and I was realizing like this is helping me, but it didn't really quite match up. Like I didn't want to transmute the energy that people were having me remove. I wanted to keep it, and that was like, there's your sign, but I didn't know about that at the time, so I was just keeping it anyway.
I can move Reiki energy and can do Reiki healing. I cannot eat. It does not feed me. And other people trying to like shove it into me for stuff. Like I've done a lot of experiments with different people who work with different energetic modalities, because as a psychic vampire, I'm on the far extreme of it has to be people. Like I need to eat people.
Okay. Yeah.
And I have tried like these fun Taoist meditations where you go out in the world, you walk, and you try to like exchange energy with trees, and it was just sort of like,
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm trying so hard. It's a
Come on, tree, give it up.
Nope, it's not working for me.
Yeah, like ambient energy, all that stuff. That's interesting, because then that's a whole nother show, like the scale at which people are vampires or a mix.
Yeah.
So let's see. Johnny has a lot of great questions.
What if you can possibly adapt your energy to the phenomena? Okay. I'm going to assume that he means by that adapting to the need, to like whoever you're interacting with. And like those are skills that energy workers can develop. They're also skills that a lot of vampires can develop. I think some people, their worlds get rocked when they learn that I do healing work. Because they're like, well, you're a vampire. And I'm like, yes, but that does not mean that I am only someone who takes. It means that I have someone who have this innate inborn sense for energy, this ability to connect to it, move it, shape it, redirect it. And yes, I have a need to take it, but that doesn't mean that every interaction is taking.
Exactly.
So adapting to the phenomenon, that's a skill that can be developed. It's a skill that can be inborn. Some people are more fluid than others. And I'd say roll with it. Like,
yeah,
hey, you can do a cool thing.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing that I've known meeting more vampires, like the whole like mirroring back, whether it be for help or not help. So a lot of people like have come at me with crazy energy, and I know people call it matching energy, but they will come to me with like their darkness, because they know I'm the person that can see them that way and still love them. And then they kind of like get mad at me because they're like, you brought that out in me. And I'm like, no, you just like start telling me this stuff. So it's like on that's a whole nother spectrum of like showing like some people are mirrors for other people's energy, and sometimes it shows them the truth and they don't like it. This might be kind of a trolley question, but we'll just
have I ever seen a vampire? So many of them. I've even seen some naked.
I saw one in my mirror one time. Which I know. I mean,
it depends on what you mean by vampire, though, too. Because if bro here is like, do you mean what I will say is this: I have, in fact, worn Bela Lugosi's opera cloak and Bela Lugosi's ring from the 1931 Dracula.
Oh wow!
A bunch of other things, because I got a fun little like private tour of Forrest J. Ackerman's house and got to meet him.
You're the universe's favorite child. How did that even? That's so cool. We know who the gods favor.
I have some really random experiences. That same night, they like took me in front of the Chinese theater. I got to put my hands in a whole bunch of people's handprints. We went through the set of Buffy. Like it was a wild time. And then I had to do an interview on zero sleep.
Yeah, and that's a lot of excitement to have without any sleep.
So cool though. Like Ofori invited me to sleep in the room where he had all of the set pieces that he'd collected from the movie Metropolis. So I was going to be in a bed underneath like the golem from Metropolis, just standing over me. So cool.
My gosh, that sounds, you've had a lot of fun. Definitely.
I have. My approach to the universe has been, why not?
Like, I like that.
That opens a lot of doors. Like, why not try that? Why not try that?
I've finally like gotten to the point where I've adapted. Like, why would anything bad happen? And people are like, well, that's ignorant. I'm like, no, like since I've started thinking like that, less bad things have been happening. You know?
I was born with a heart defect. My life expectancy was 5. I was the first person to survive the surgery that actually kept me past the age of 5. So everything after that is gravy. Like, I've already like faced death. We had conversations about it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? The thing that I was already primed to expect to happen before my 5th birthday. Like, why not try? Why not live? Why not explore?
Now you're living life as a badass vampire author, that is an occult genius, and also many other awesome things that I can't even voice because you're just awesome. So I think that was the last question. Oh wait, Fam has one. Did you feel
Oh,
any?
that was exactly why they took me. So the talent coordinator, that was his thing. He's like, okay, so you're a psychic vampire and you're a psychic. Like, put your hands in these. And mostly, like, what he was hoping for is that I would pick up the residual energy of the people who made the handprints. And let me see, I put mine in. Oh God, he had me put my hands in. I think it was John Wayne was in there. Darth Vader. Like, there was just a whole slew of them. And mostly what I felt, I did feel energy, but I felt the energy of the people who constantly go there to feel something, like what they're bringing to that location. It reminded me a little bit of, exploring the psychic impressions of a graveyard. You don't necessarily pick up the spirits of the dead people who are buried there. Most people are not that invested in their corpse.
I always think that, and people get mad at me. I'm like, I'm not hanging around my old.
But cemeteries are haunted by memories, by the memories and grief and the loss and the things that everybody who goes there with their idea of their lost loved one. And in some ways, they create a sort of icon, an image of the person that they miss. And those ghosts you can definitely perceive. They're not necessarily sentient. They can become sentient. Sometimes created egregores can, but mostly what you're picking up is what the living have brought there.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's a lot of spaces too. I've found in like residual energy just collecting. And there was a thing in our old house in Kentucky that my son was terrified of, and I finally like got the courage just to like remote view it, and it was just like it was not alive, but it was scary. It was a ball of just angst. And I found out from another neighbor that the child that lived there before was an angry teenager going through a lot because of the parent separation. It was all that just in a little, like it was like a little weird black ball that was just like vibrating.
I have seen that. I have seen a lot of that. It's basically like a psychic dust bunny, but because
perfect.
They're yucky, and they are just they resonate with whatever built them up, and you start feeling it.
Yeah, my son was 2, so like he knew something was off. So yeah, he would see at that age. He saw a lot of strange things, and he'd be talking to people like, come on, let's go play. And we're like, who are you talking to? He's like, oh, that guy that was outside. I'm like, well, now he's inside. Hey, guy, can we talk before you play in here? So I have one final question. What are some resources for people? Because you do a lot of occult wisdom stuff, but a lot of people know you for the vampirism. And that's kind of like one of my things right now. Not right now, but like just having people come forth, like if they feel like they have these things happening, if they feel like, oh, like they're having some sort of vampiric awakening or energy awakening. What are some resources that you know of or that you have yourself to help people integrate these like awakening experiences, whether it be vampiric, magical, energetic, whatever, however they want to call it?
My recommendations will vary based on how do you best access information. If you resonate with people in video and in short bursts, like really compellingly explain stuff to you, look for the vampire Jack Townsend. He's doing fantastic work. He's well informed, and he really supports an incredibly healthy community. So like look for him on TikTok and Instagram, and he does a lot of informative stuff and energy work that you can participate in. If you're someone like me, where like books are where you really want to, like, you don't want to deal with people, let's just read it in a book. There's my own book, The Psychic Vampire Codex. That is not the only thing that is out there. You can look up The Ethical Psychic Vampire. There's a couple of other things. Michael Ford, I think, has something that's a little bit more toward like really dark interpretations of vampirism from more of a Luciferian, satanic perspective. If you can't, okay, because I was a poor kid growing up. If running out and buying a book is just not in the cards, I donated an early version of the Vampire Codex to the website sacred-texts.com in perpetuity. It is free. It is always up there. So if you want to go through the earlier one, with the warning that I was a bit of an edgelord when I first started off, very goth.
Well, now I want to read that one.
Bombastic, but all the information is still there. So that is one easy way. There's a vampire ritual book that's up there too, if ritual magic is sort of like where you want to go. Let me see. There's a couple of people I would warn you away from because of either the way the person interprets stuff, some of their attitudes toward consent. But again, your mileage may vary. There is a book by a fellow named who goes by Constantinos called Vampires, the Occult Truth. It came out in 1996. It gives you some perspectives from people who are writing in about their experiences. Rosemary Ellen Guiley did the same thing with a book much earlier called Vampires Among Us. There was another researcher from the late 80s and early 90s, Dr. Stephen Kaplan. His stuff is much harder to find. You might find Noreen Dresser's American Vampires, Fans, Victims, and Practitioners, which was published around 1989 or 1990. Most of those are someone who's outside of our community doing kind of an ethnographic study looking in. But they do tell people's stories. Jeff Gwynn's Something in the Blood does the same thing. But there's not a lot of books that you're going to find that are from the vampire's perspective. I do think that looking up Dion Fortune's Psychic Self-Defense and reading what she has to say about psychic vampires and astral vampires, if for no other reason than the fact that it has been so influential on a lot of magical workers and new age people and witches' ideas of what vampires are, that's useful as well. That's one that's in the public domain, so you can probably find versions of it free online.
Well, thank you very much for all those resources. And any final thoughts before we end the stream?
Oh, this was lovely. I mean, just, for everybody, anybody listening, anybody like trying to figure themselves out, you are the expert on you. You are the first and the last word on how things work for you. You should make every effort to be informed, but a good portion of being informed is simply taking the time to explore yourself, like how you interface with reality, and basically make the handbook of you by keeping records, by being open to experimentation, by being open to the possibilities of what you experience, and also stepping back from those experiences occasionally to analyze them and assess them objectively as much as you can. But just the only thing to really be aware of, to be wary of, is anyone who's going to try to sell you the truth.
Wow, thank you so much. Hang out for a minute after I end the stream. Mm-hmm. Thank you, everybody that's listening now, later, that joined us live, that is joining us. I almost said in another dimension, but maybe. So
another dimension, another time and place.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me, I grew up listening to like Coast to Coast, and he used to say like in another dimension, so it just like comes to my mind. All right, guys, I'll shut up because I'll never shut up if I don't. Whatever. That didn't make sense either. Great seeing everybody, and I will see you next week. I have a fiction, dark romance author on by the name of Alicia Onyx, and Alexia Onyx. She wrote a book called Come Out, Come Out. It has a plus size FMC and a skinny, tatted up bisexual ghost that she gets to have a lot of fun with. So I'm very excited to have her next week. Stay tuned for that and have a great night.